Hi, my name is Moray and welcome to Moray's Muse. The subject today's video is we're going to be talking about how the Rosetta Stone ended up in the British Museum. This amazing stele of granodiorite is one of London's most famous attractions. It is the most famous item in the British Museum, the most visited item in the British Museum. It was a very exciting discovery. Because of the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, historians and translators could finally understand hieroglyphics. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. However, how did it get into the British Museum? That is what we are going to answer today. So we're going to talk about briefly the history of the Rosetta Stone. Okay, so the Rosetta Stone was created during the reign of King Ptolemy Epiphanes. Ptolemy Epiphanes wasn't that much of a good ruler, but he does get a lot of credit because this stone that is so remarkable to us in the modern era and uncovers so much about Egypt was created under his reign. The stone was carved during the Hellenistic period and it's uncovered to have lived at a temple, possibly Sais. It was moved during late antiquity during the Mamluk period, and eventually it was used as building material near Fort Julian in the town in Rosetta. It was found in Rashid in July 1799 by a Frenchman, Pierre-François Bouchard. And this was found during the Napoleonic campaign in Egypt. This was the first ancient bilingual text uncovered in modern time, and plaster casts and copies were floating around Europe. When the British defeated the French during the Napoleonic Wars, they brought the stone back to London, and they brought it under their own terms. Since 1802, it's been on display at the British Museum. There were many studies of the Rosetta Stone, and the stone is listed officially as a black stone of granodiorite with inscriptions in Egyptian and Demotic. The first two layers, the top of the text is in ancient Egyptian and Demotic, and the bottom is in ancient Greek. Actually, when it first arrived in London, the text was covered in white chalk so it could make the text more legible to visitors. However, since 1999, it's been cleaned and the stone has been displayed as it was found. So what is the history of King Ptolemy and the Rosetta Stone? Well, King Ptolemy, it is said that once he was coronated, the Rosetta Stone was created, and it was inscribed with a decree that established a divine cult. The decree was issued by a congress of priests who gathered at Memphis. The date is given as 4 Xandakos. So Ptolemy Epiphanes was a really problematic ruler. We only like him now in modern times because the Rosetta Stone was created under his reign. He was the son of Ptolemy Philopator and his wife, his sister Arsinoe. They reigned from 204 to 181 BC. And Ptolemy Epiphanes became ruler age 5 because both of his parents were murdered. And the Rosetta Stone was created when Ptolemy Epiphanes was a child. So let's talk about the context in which the Rosetta Stone was found. French forces under Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Egypt. This happened in 1790, and the biggest priority for them was strengthening Fort Julian. Lieutenant Pierre-François Bouchard found the Rosetta Stone. Napoleon had announced a scientific association in Cairo, and this discovery was announced at the institution. The discovery was reported in September in Courrier de l'Egypte, the official newspaper of the French expedition. Wow, they had their own newspaper. And the writer said that he hoped that this stone would make hieroglyphics translatable. All around Europe, people were so excited. However, the British were ready to attack. After Napoleon's departure, French troops held off British and Ottoman attacks for 18 months. And in March 1801, the British landed. Napoleon's troops marched north towards the Mediterranean with many discoveries, transporting the stone as just one of the discoveries they had found in Egypt. And they went to Alexandria where they were besieged by the British. After the surrender of the French, there were questions about where the discoveries would live, pretty much. And when scholars Edward Daniel Clark and William Richard Hamilton came to look at the new discoveries acquired by the British, they couldn't believe how many artifacts they had found that the French had not revealed. Clark writes, "We found much more in their possession that was represented or imagined." And Hutchinson, the British, then claim that all of these items are now property of the British Crown. The French say to the British, "We would rather burn all of our items than hand them over to you." And they referred to the destruction of the Library of Alexandria. But the British pleaded to the French. The French finally agreed because these are natural history specimens. The agreement was reached and the transfer of the objects was given over to the British. And this is where the capitulation of Alexandria comes in. Agreement signed by representatives of the Ottoman Empire, the British and the French came into power in 1801. We actually have no evidence, believe it or not, of how it was transported to London. The stone landed in Portsmouth in 1802, and the stone was presented to scholars at the Society of Antiquaries, and it was first seen in London on the 11th of March, 1802. In 1802, the Society gave 4 plaster casts of the Rosetta Stone to universities such as the University of Oxford. And this really pisses me off because the British Museum will not allow a 3D scanner in to the British Museum, and yet they stole stuff and they were like, let's make plaster casts, let's give all this knowledge to everyone. And now in 2025, it's like, if you make a fucking copy, you'll go to prison. You know, like... And since this time, the stone has been exhibited in the British Museum ever since. Even World War I and World War II did not stop the British Museum having the Rosetta Stone. Even when the Rosetta Stone was undergoing conservation measures in 1999, it still did not leave the British Museum. It was worked on whilst on display. The only time the Rosetta Stone left the British Museum is during World War I. And in 1917, it was moved to the Postal Tube Railway in Mount Pleasant near Holborn. And it went back to France in 1972. But has it gone home? Has it gone home, Gigi? No. No. Calls for the Rosetta Stone to go back to Egypt have always been happening. July 2003, Zahi Hawass of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities really called for the Rosetta Stone to go back home, back to Egypt, and proposed for this icon of Egypt to go back where it belongs. Mr. Hawass commented that the Rosetta Stone is an icon of Egyptian history, and 2 years later in 2005, he didn't just ask for the Rosetta Stone to go back, but he asked for Nefertiti to go back home. Nefertiti's living in Berlin, and he wanted the Dendera Zodiac to leave the Louvre in Paris and go back home to Egypt, and he wanted the bust of Ankaf to come back home from Boston in Massachusetts. Oh, I've been there. The chowder is so good there. I think about sorry, not going around about clam chowder. Now, what does the British Museum do? 2005, the British Museum goes, it's not a no, but here's a replica. A fiberglass replica. The Egyptians took that, they took that. It was displayed in Rashid, in Rosetta. But the Egyptians were like, I want a 3-month loan of our item that was stolen. Mr. Hawass has made it his personal goal to get the Rosetta Stone back home. These calls for the Rosetta Stone to go back home have become very pertinent since 2013. The Grand Egyptian Museum at Giza is very, very famous and very, very important. And the Egyptians now, the Rosetta Stone should go back home because it belongs to the Egyptians. But especially now since 2013, the Egyptians have this amazing museum, just as cool as the British Museum, to put the Rosetta Stone in. So why is it not going back home? I love the British Museum with all my heart. It's my favorite place in the world, but it does have a past that is quite problematic. And whether Gen Z are going to get these items repatriated back is a sight to be seen. I don't know whether we will do it. I think 16 to 17 year olds are now voting, right? And they're all gonna go for Farajis. So I don't think we will see the Rosetta Stone go back home in my lifetime, at least. But I love the British Museum dearly, but I am a huge, I am a person that does want objects repatriated back, because the British Museum has around 2 million visitors a year, and it's been running for a few centuries now. People have been educated enough from it. It is now time for a change of direction, and I think the British Museum's policy should be that it looks after artifacts that are in danger now. For example, the pyramids of Sudan are in huge danger, and the Sudanese are trying to protect it, but the British could help so much. That's real repatriation effort, not keeping a stolen artifact that was kept after pleas for it to go back. You know what I mean? If the British Museum were really passionate about proper repatriation, they'd be in Ukraine right now, they'd be in Sudan right now, they'd be in Palestine right now, you know what I mean? Helping the people and saving the artifacts. But they're not, they don't want to return their stolen shit. I love history with a lot of my being. I'm just a girl in my 20s who has history as a side passion. But there are so many countries at war right now who need help looking after these artifacts that could be damaged during warfare. And instead of helping countries or sending out aid, the British Museum is just keeping stuff that was discovered and not returning it. If the British Museum was really passionate about repatriation, there's a lot they could do with some of the conflict that's going on in the world right now and helping save some artifacts. So yeah, that's my opinion on it. Anyway, yeah, that's my opinion on it. If you like this video, then you should subscribe. People are joining now. People are like watching us. That's like really cool. Give me some critique. See you in the next one.